Welcome back to the Inner Scoreboard. I'm Paul Brown, a psychotherapist and a mental performance coach. In today's episode, I sit down with former NHL defenseman Kurtis Foster. While many know Kurtis for his NHL career, this conversation goes far beyond professional hockey. We talk about the lessons he learned growing up in minor hockey, the people who shaped his development, and how those experiences continue to influence the way he coaches today. We also discuss the realities of playing at the highest level, including the devastating leg injury that threatened not only his career, but his identity as an athlete. Kurtis shares what recovery was really like, the physical challenges, the mental battle, and what it took to find his way back to the NHL. Whether you're an athlete, a coach, a parent, or simply someone navigating adversity, there's a lot to take away from this conversation about resilience, perspective, and the lasting impact of sport. Let's get started. I'm sitting down with Kurtis Foster, father of three children, selected 69th overall in the 1997 OHL draft by the Peterborough Petes. Played your entire junior career with the Petes, and then got drafted by the Calgary Flames in Calgary, which is that would have been a pretty cool experience. My understanding is you played for 10 teams, but I'm not sure if you count the Mighty Ducks and the Ducks as the same
Yeah.
team or not. Coached in the OHL for the Peterborough Petes, Kingston Frontenacs, and the Oshawa Generals, and in 2022 became a development coach with the Arizona Coyotes, who then became the Utah Mammoth. And you also coached the U16 AAA Peterborough Minor Petes.
Yeah, it's a lot of teams over the years. I think my daughter makes fun of me all the time saying that all I care about is hockey. So it's I'm pretty lucky to be able to play it when I was a kid, play it when I was as a professional, and then be able to coach it. I'm pretty lucky that way.
Nice. When people, so it's funny because this is the first time you and I have actually had a conversation. We've seen each other at
Hmm.
the rink lots of times over the years, and
Hmm.
say hello. And there's times I've seen you on the ice, and I'm that coach that if I arrive to a practice early, I like to go and stand on the bench and try and steal some drills. So I've seen you out there, but we've never really spoken before. And so for me, it's a funny thing because knowing that you played in the NHL. I suspect that some people are really drawn and want to talk all the time about that. And I sometimes wonder about, if that's frustrating for you. And then there's a flip side of me that's also like, I'm purposely not going to approach somebody because they're famous. So I'm like, no, 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 I'm not going to bother. So yeah, so
It's something. It's kind of like you get used to it. I think it's something that what I like more than anything is when I was talking to a guy who's going to help me coach this year. He's coming on board just kind of as like an eye in the sky to help out with their U16s. And he like kind of was like, he's like, I got to be honest, like you're my favorite player when I play for the Petes. And I'm like, it's weird to hear that, it's like, because, he's a grown man and he's got kids. And I'm like, holy God, I played a long time ago. And, when my kids talk about their friends being like, oh my God, your dad played in the NHL. And then, it's almost, feels like it was so long ago that, it's you know it's kind of nice to relive the memories sometimes. But it's funny you talk about too, like going to a rink and watching other teams practice. I do that every time too. Like I have full confidence in what I do when I go out for practice, but I love stealing stuff and seeing what other guys are doing and trying to pick out stuff anytime I walk in a rink.
Yeah, it's funny because they say the best coaches are the best thieves, right? We just steal
Hmm.
drills from other people. I've got one, so we both know McDonnell, and so
Yeah.
he had a drill he was running one day, and so I'm filming it and then I'm writing it down after, and I've messaged him and I'm like, hey, I love this skate. It's such a great drill. I said, what do you call it? And please tell me it's not called a line skate. And he,
Yeah.
and he, he just responds, line skate. So I've had this drill for almost a year. My players knew it as the line skate, and we're trying to find a new name for it. So we're going to name it after somebody's pet or old car or something. But
Yeah.
'cause it's a terrible name. But yeah, always stealing drills from other coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that like, I steal stuff off Instagram too. Like I watch stuff, watch skills, watch, it's all the same stuff, but I love seeing how different people just like manufacture and find ways to, whether you add it longer or you add like, more reps, whatever it is. I always love just seeing what other people do.
Yeah, and if you can sometimes even get that small twist, there's small nuance on a drill to change it, that can kind of create more interest from the players too. So they're not, oh, we're doing this drill again. If you got a little bit of a different flair, you're doing the same skills, but just kind of dress it up a little bit differently.
Yeah. It's definitely part of it. Like I like teams I work with, we do a lot of the same drills, but then you're just adding different aspects. If you're doing a breakout drill, you're doing a different kind of puck retrieval, and then you're doing a different play, whether it's up the wall or up the middle. It's a different entry, and then it's a different offensive zone play. So like, if you're always changing that up, hopefully by the end of the year you can give them those clues and they know the drill. Hey, we're doing the mini breakout, and then they know, but hey, we're gonna do this, 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 and this, and they're like, all right, and then they do it, and it's pretty fun when they start figuring it out and like when they start playing with pace, it's pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, watching that evolution is really nice. And especially when you can just say, okay, do this drill, and they set it up themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice when those things start to click. Like I've got the age group below you, and so
Mhm.
I'm coaching 15 single A and you're 16 triple A. So it's nice also at those ages to see like connections really start to happen for them.
Yeah, like I find like I find a lot of young kid coaches, we want to keep it simple and we want to, but I always find that the players are like they want more. They want more details. They want more, you know, more battling. So like, for me, it's always changing the details, doing the same drills where they know the base of like where the pucks go, where we're going, but we're going to change the breakout, and then we're going to change we're going to change the entry, and then we're going to change the offensive zone play, and then we're going to, make sure that we get above the puck or we skate out of the zone hard. And I think all those little details, I think personally, like the younger kid coaches, you know, they're a little scared because they want to keep it simple because they feel the players you don't want to overwhelm. But I think that like as much as you want to coach to the lowest player, you got to coach to the best player, and you got to make everybody better. And I think it might take longer for the lower player to catch up, but they will. You just got to
Mhm.
give them the ability to make mistakes.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opinion coach to the higher end of the team because
Mhm.
that I think you have to coach the higher level of the team and to try and draw those to pull those weaker players up. If you coach the lower end, then of course our stronger players are not going to get stronger as quickly. And then I think with those weaker players, you have to spend a bit more time with them in different ways, whether it's the mental side of it in terms of supporting them and encouraging them, or maybe you're spending a bit more time in a specific drill and kind of guiding them. But I'm kind of the same way, like coach to the higher end level of the team to draw everyone up and to keep pushing everyone forward.
Yeah, and I truly believe they all get there. They just get there when they get there. Some take a little longer, some pick it up right away. But I know with us, like, there really is some kids that pick stuff up by watching you demonstrate it. And then there really is some that can watch on the board and just get it. Like, both of my boys, I have two boys playing hockey. One's U16 AAA, one's U14 AA, and both of them are very smart boys. But, when they're at the board, they don't get the drill. Like they don't. So I always tell them, go to the back of the line, watch what you're doing, and then they get it. And so, you got to really figure out what everybody does. But, when you make sure that you go to the board, earlier in the year and you're going over the details of it, then you're going out and you're showing them, then you're doing it and you're making, adjustments, or you're helping them if they make mistakes. That's how they learn. And, you have to be okay with it being not good, and it's going to be not good for a bit until eventually they pick it up. And then you're going to be like, there it is. The kids are flying, they're picking it up, they're making decisions. And it's pretty rewarding as a coach when they start doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you able to kind of think back in your hockey career to maybe when you were younger and any coaches that maybe had, significant impact on you?
Yeah, that's a funny question. You get asked that sometimes, and it's so long ago. Um, it's hard remembering coaches, but two come to mind for me. If I'm talking about minor hockey, there was one called Bill White. Bill White is like a legend in the Ottawa Valley area, and he coaches Ottawa Valley Titans, probably like first year contact. And he was old school. We did the line up, the, what do you call that? When you line up along the wall and you got to skate through everybody and you learn how to take a hit and give a hit. And then,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Yeah, like running the gauntlet almost.
yeah, like all that stuff. I remember that stuff because it was our introduction to hitting, and you had basically the way he coached, like you had no choice but to suck it up and learn how to take a hit, how to give a hit. And I always remember him just because of his old school mentality that way. And then I remember my U16 coach, his name was Jeff Nolan, and he came in for 1 year and he had coached U16 year before. And it was my first experience of having a coach that was like full of details, like everything in our structure and the plays we wanted to make went to a new level. And it went from basically opening the bag and playing hockey to like now we're becoming hockey players. And I always remember him because he came in, he pushed me. I had a great season, but I think a lot of it went back to him coming in and kind of changing our mentality of going from like, you know, it was all about now, like, how does the other team play? What do they give you? What play will work? Hey,
Hmm.
you're going to match against this player. And, we had 5D, and, we always laugh when I see this guy back, around Ottawa. His name was Ryan Barnes, and he was a right-handed D. I was a right-handed D. We rolled five all the time, because we didn't have anybody else. We played Ottawa Valley Titans Double A, and the coaches couldn't find anybody else to fill that six spots. We ran five, and basically it was every game, whoever the opposing team was, I was against them. And then every time we had any offensive situations, Barnsley was on the ice. And all those scenarios and, game situation stuff we never really did before. And so I always remember Jeff being a guy that introduced us to it and like really made my transition to the OHL easier than probably some other coaches before.
So it's almost a little bit like going from a system of like working hard, but see puck, get puck, to
Yeah.
now we're moving into like systems and actually understanding the mechanics of the game a bit more.
Yeah, and kind of just like the game details and the management of the game and stuff where now there's matchups and now, hey, you got to get off the ice now because, the guy you were on against gets off the ice and all that stuff that you kind of took for granted when you were just playing hockey. And then, you just get to the rink, back then you didn't warm up. You got to the rink, you opened your bag, you had a blast in the room, and then you got dressed, went on the ice. Where then it was, hey, we're playing these guys. We need this guy against him and this guy against him. We want this forward line against them. This is the power play unit. This is the penalty kill unit. And I found it like, I just remember back that it like really helped my transition to the OHL because I think if I hadn't had that, it would have been even more mind blowing going into the OHL where you're already dealing with like, it's way faster, it's way bigger, it's way stronger, it's meaner, it's tougher. It would have been so much more if I was learning that part of the game as well.
Talk to me a little bit about that, maybe that point in your life and that transition where the OHL became a reality that, okay, I'm not like there's going to be something after minor hockey, whether it's OHL or going to the NHL.
Yeah, it's actually some like pretty cool stories. Like my parents really kept it away from me. Um, I remember going to Ottawa 67s always played on Friday nights. I'm from Ottawa, and we'd go to the game. I can like still to this day like remember the smell of the popcorn, like going on a Friday night. They had great fans watching like Mike Pekka, Chris Simon, Chris Snell, and then going the year before I was drafted and seeing like Brian Campbell and Nick Boynton and Dan Tessier and these guys, and I was such a fan. I'm there, where they come off for the Zamboni, and I'm like overlooking, like trying to get a stick, and then a year later I'm playing against them. Like my parents did a
Yeah.
really good job of like kind of keeping me in the moment. And my dad talks about how like some days I'd get off the bus and there would be an agent or a scout in the. My dad was a mechanic and he had a garage at the house. They'd be talking in the garage, and I'd get off the bus and go in the house and have no idea. And I remember to this day we were going on Thursday nights. We would go to a Canada Valley Lasers. It was a junior A team in town. It was Thursday nights. They played at this small arena in Canada, and we'd always go. It was a fun atmosphere. A lot of guys that played older than me, and I remember we were walking the game, and my dad was like, "Okay, Kurt, like." There's this list coming out. It's an OHL list, and there's different prospects. There's A prospects, there's B prospects, there's C prospects. And I just want you to know you're going to be on it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I was kind of like, well, who else is on it from our team? And he's like, well, no, just you. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, what am I? He's like, well, you're a B. And I'm like, okay. And then it was like kind of like before then, I didn't really even think it was attainable. And then that was my kind of welcome to like, oh, here we go. Like, okay, then then after the season there was under 17 tryouts, and we're meeting with agents, and we're in this like office in Toronto, me and my mom, and like there's Scott Niedermayer's jerseys on the wall, and like all these, it's a whole floor of this office building, and I'm like, I'm a kid that was still cheering for the 67s like a couple months ago, and now I'm taking all this in, and it was a lot. Like, come from a blue collar family. My dad is a mechanic. My mom is like basically an accountant without the title. Like she's, kind of a bookkeeper, and
Mhm.
they've worked so hard their whole lives. They sacrificed so much for us that, it it was almost mind blowing to think like, when I got drafted, I was in a hotel in Belleville because my brother was having a spring tournament in Marmora, and we had a message on the hotel phone from my agent to call Jeff Toohey because the Peterborough Pizza just drafted me.
Okay, yeah.
Like I'm not even at the draft. Like because when I got drafted, it was you had to be drafted in the top two rounds as a 16-year-old. There's only 40 16-year-olds could be drafted, or top four rounds, sorry, but each team could take two. And I got drafted in the fourth round, and I remember like I think we called Jeff Tui from a payphone in Marmora to be like introduced to him. So like, it was something that like, now everybody knows about it, and everybody, prepares, and everybody has agents, and it's changed so much that like it's almost fun to look back and see how, innocent it was. And then when me and my mom went the next week to big old Peterborough to go to a rookie camp. It was like something that I remember seeing the sign in Tweed saying Peterborough 99 kilometers or whatever it was. And it's something I never forget because, I came to Peterborough and I played 5 years and met my wife and have lived here ever since. And it's my home. I've been 45 this year, and I've lived here for 27 years, and I lived in Ottawa for 18. So it's kind of funny
Hmm.
how this is actually where home is now. And it's all from something that like, when I look back on it, it's just kind of weird that like that's how it happened. Like now everybody kind of almost expects it, or it's so much more visible. Where back then it just was like it was just fun because it was like I didn't expect it.
Which I think speaks to the, what hockey, when we start, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be just about fun and just about playing and being on the ice and doing that. And I
Mhm.
find that now, there's so many different levels of competitive hockey that it kind of loses that a bit. And there's always kind of that push and always
Mhm.
that attention put onto it. I find it interesting as someone who also lives in Peterborough to feel like coming to the metropolis of Peterborough, because it's still
Yeah,
it is kind of small town. So I like my teenage years were in Whitby, and
yeah,
Peterborough reminds me of Whitby like 25 years ago, because there's still a bit of a
yeah.
small town vibe, but subdivisions are starting to grow, and but you can still find everything you want. So I can appreciate, because I moved to Whitby from Scarborough,
Okay.
so
You
I
kind of
kind
get
of,
getting smaller as you go.
yeah, yeah. But I went through that transition going from Scarborough to Whitby, kind
Yeah.
of you going from the Ottawa area, because you weren't right in Ottawa, right? You were
No, I was
outside.
like a small town between Carp and Almont, Ontario. Almont, Ontario is like known for it was the birthplace of James Naismith, the inventor of basketball. And
Oh, nice.
it's a small town of 4 or 5 thousand, and then Carp was a small town of 1,000 or so. And we were 25 minutes from Ottawa, but I was a country kid, and so like coming to Peter, even though like we were only 25 minutes, 30 minutes from Ottawa. Like we only went there for games. Like it was like coming to Peterborough to live was like, yeah, it was like moving to the city. It was like, it was very surreal to look back on it and think that like, the feelings I had coming to this big city. And then now this is just where home is.
You talked about, so when you were kind of coming through the ranks, OHL, NHL, not on your radar at all. You were just kind of playing the game, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're going to be on this list. And the reality, coming to a prospects camp in Peterborough. And now there's so much attention on it. players have agents. You're coaching U16 AAA this year, so draft
Mhm.
year, agents, pressure. How are you able to bring kind of your previous experience and maybe some, for lack of a better term, that innocence and joy into like the coaching experience now for some of these kids so they don't lose sight of that?
Yeah, that's a really actually interesting question. You know what, like to sit here and, we could talk for hours on what I think about like how much it's changed and where it is. But like for me, I have 5 players away trying out for Team Ontario right now. Top 120 players, 2011s are in Waterloo. And, I reached out to all of them this week and, um, I had a phone call with all the kids talking about what Hockey Canada looks for, not on the ice. How you
Hmm.
dress, how you are, are you opening doors? Are you first out of the room? Are you last? Do you learn everybody's name? Like I told them all about this stuff, how this stuff
Yeah.
matters when everybody's so good. Something like this could actually help you make a team. And the one mom wrote me back and said that the kid got off the phone and, it was a really nice thing to hear, but the kid said, that's why Kurtis is a great coach. Like he really cares about us. And so for me, I kind of go by that motto all the time is I try to make sure that every kid knows that I care about them and that I want to have a good time and I want to enjoy the rink. And so, yeah, like whether it's U14 AA or it's U16 AAA, I'm a big believer that we get on the ice, it's go time. Like we have things to do, we have details we want to do it by. But I'm the first guy to like hoot and holler if a guy gets beat 1-on-1 or bang my stick if a guy trips. Like you have to enjoy it. And, there is so much pressure now in U16. Um, some of it is natural, some of it is not natural, some of it is, hopes are very high, dreams are very high. So, the game has changed that way. But I try to make it so the kids enjoy coming to the rink. And I try to make
Hmm.
sure that we're having fun all the time. It's not all the time as in the whole practice, but at some point, I want to make sure that these kids want to continuously come back to the rink. And for me, that is making sure they know I care about them and making sure that they have a good time when they come to the rink. And, there's going to be practices that are hard and there's going to be, conversations that are honest and there's going to be conversations that come at me that aren't easy and, make you question minor hockey. But at the end of the day, it's about making those kids want to come to the rink. And that's why I love doing it. And it's what I try to bring from like, when I started, like you said, and the way I thought about it is, trying to bring that to them to make them understand that like we do this because it's fun. Like, you put yourself through everything you do, the training, the battles, the blocking shots, the things because when you come to the bench and a guy gives you a tap and says great job and you have a smile on your face, that's what it's about. And some people forget that, and I think I try to make sure that I coach that way as much as I can.
Hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate that kind of philosophy. I approach things in a similar way that you got to have that accountability. Like you said, you hit the ice, it's go time. The expectation is you've got to be working hard. And
Yeah.
at the same time, we've got to be able to mess around, have some fun, and have some jokes. I get a lot of like kids that kind of look at me kind of sideways sometimes on the bench because they can't believe like you're joking and saying certain things because they're not used to some coaches doing that. And it's like you have to do that. I also think that you're instilling some incredible life lessons, like the way you're describing it, because you're showing up for them in so many different ways, right? You're showing up to say there are expectations, that you come prepared and that you work hard, and I'm an adult who has your back if you need to have a tough conversation or you're going to that competition this weekend. I'm going to check in on you and I'm gonna joke around with you, and I'm probably gonna rib you about some stuff, but I'll let you rib me too. So I think like I really appreciate your approach in that way because it sets them up for more success long term, I think.
Yeah, like so I mean, like I said, I we could talk about this for days on like what I believe in coaching, but like I'm serious in, we have a playbook and we play very structured and the way I want to play and the principles and what I believe in, they know, they understand, and I expect it. But in saying that, like before practice, I'm like, hey, like I'll tell you if we have a meeting. And if we have a meeting, I want you on time. I want you ready to go. But if I don't care what you guys do. Like, just
Yeah.
make sure when you get on the ice, or I say you're got to be ready 10 minutes before, you're ready. Everybody's dressed and we're ready to go. So like for me, I don't, like they always say, like you can't win every battle when you want to win the war. And like, there's times where like, hey, you guys want music for me before practice, or sometimes I do it in practice before games. I don't really care. Like I talk to them an hour before a game and then they don't see me again because they hear from me all the time. So
Yeah.
I give my assistant coach the ability to get them fired up because A, that they're a little closer with them that way. B, I'm not a rah guy, so I let my assistants do that. And then C, my assistant's a young guy and he starts to then get comfortable talking in front of a group. So like
Right.
that's
So
how I
experience for
learned how
him.
to yeah, that's how I learned from a guy named Jay Verdi, who was my coach at Kingston. That's what he did. And I've kept it everywhere because it helps young coaches get more experience and get comfortable talking in front of a group. But then players also really need to hear from me again. They just heard from me 3 times this week and on video. And so for me, like, you know, it's just something that like, at the end of the day, everything I believe in and I do, I've learned from somebody. And it's being around good people that you pick up here and there. And it comes down to like, I believe in like structure. I believe in like kids having a plan because if you know that black and white guys are where they're supposed to be, you're going to play faster, you're going to think faster. So the game
Hmm.
is faster. And so that's how I teach. But in the same breath, like I let them be kids at the same time. Like there's a time and a place for everything. And that's how I try to become a better coach myself by letting them have their time while when it's our time as a team, they're ready to go.
Yeah, and I think, you said they're kids as well and letting them be kids and have fun. And I think because there's so much structured time around, rep sports in general, not just hockey, but all of them,
Mhm.
that I think sometimes we lose that, the fact that they just need to go out and have fun and be kids sometimes because so much
Yeah,
of it is
like
structured.
last year they're high school kids, and I would laugh because we have a practice say at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. The expectation is you're there 6:15. If we have a meeting in the video room at the Image the office at the HPA, like it's usually 30 minutes before. But like sometime I'll find them a couple times I found them playing manhunt in the whole and they're high school students. Like they're still kids. And like
Yeah,
it's like whatever, run around. Like I don't care. But like when you walk in that door,
be ready.
let's go. Like don't waste my time, don't waste your time. And that's where like I find like you almost can get more out of the kids because they know you care about them, they know you want to get better, but they also know you want them to have fun. And it's something that like I picked up from a couple coaches that I believe in and guys that I kind of have mentored me, and um, it's something that like I try to just bring to the rink every time I go.
I think the most important question I'm going to ask you today is when they're playing manhunt, do you join?
No, because I'm injury prone, so most likely if I do that, I'll trip and break something.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking that because I'm like, I would love to play manhunt with the kids, but my knees are so messed up. Like it's just going to be a bad scene.
100%.
Yeah. I'm curious for you, and my thought process is shifting a little bit through our conversation about kind of that comparison of player and coach. And I'm curious, like when, like prepping for games, when as a player and now as a coach, what kind of things have you pulled from that player experience to prepping for a game as a coach now?
Yeah, that's going to start back to when my first year coaching. So I remember like seeing a coach. Well, Rob Wilson is with the Pete's now, and my last year playing, he was my head coach in Nuremberg in Germany. And a couple years after he came back to Peterborough, I saw him and I said, like, you know, I used to walk by the whiteboard in Nuremberg all the time, and I used to go, "Why am I there on the?" Because he had the lineup, and I'm always like, I would get so mad at who my partner was, and why was I the 6D and not the two, or whatever you're thinking about. And I said to him, I said, I get it now. Like, as a coach, we would talk for hours trying to figure out what combinations are right, and like how who worked with who better and who's playing well. And then a player can walk in and in 2 seconds be like, what's the coach thinking? And it's like they don't know how much time you put into it. So I think from like the playing to the coaching is like I've tried to keep that mindset into a lot of the decisions and stuff on how I do things. So, when we build the season, like I said, there's negotiables in what I expect, but there's non-negotiables in stuff that whether it's music or um, dress code or all these things where I talk to the players and I remember to ask them what they'd like or where can
Mhm.
we find a happy medium. So I try to like from when being a player to a coach, I try to remember the player side of me. I think when I started coaching, I was two-player coach. And then
Yeah.
I learned that you can't be two-player coach as a head coach, as an assistant coach. Yes, that is your job. You grow the relationship. You're tight. You're almost like friends. Where almost as a head coach, you're almost like a father, and you're
Right.
you know you're looking after the group. So it took me time to understand that. But like for preparation wise, for me, I was a guy where if the bus was late when I played for the Pete's, my anxiety level went through the roof, and I was like a mess. So
Oh,
like
really?
yeah, like I was about routine. It was okay, 2 hours before we arrive, 2:40, hour 45 is a meeting. And then an hour 40 is PP, hour 35 is PK, and then you have 30 minutes to warm up. And then you have, warm up was at this time. I started getting dressed at this time. And like it's just how my process was when I played. So when I coach, I know kids are all different, but I try to have a routine in how we build practice, how we prepare for games. I expect them to be there an hour before, 50 minutes before I speak. We go over structure. We go over a couple things that I feel, game plan wise with who we're playing, who you need to watch, who you need to hit, who you need to, you know, try to lure them into penalties. I talk for 7, 8 minutes and then I'm done. And then, they don't see me again. And it's something that, like I said before, I learned that from a coach, but that next 40 minutes, 30 minutes has got to be their time. It's got to be their team
Hmm.
time to warm up together. And I always believe that there should be some sort of a warm up together, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and then they can go off on their own. But basically, like you go for a warm up, you come home, you come back together. And then after that, they got to figure it out their own way. Some kids ask, can I listen to my headphones? No problem. But like, your phone's got to be, off and all that stuff, all the rules that we do with Hockey Canada, like,
Yeah.
you got to be careful with it. But everybody has their own routine and there's ways for it to be your own, but then they still have their time to prepare themselves because at the end of the day, all of them prepare a little different. Maybe Johnny's more about like going harder in off ice warm up because he wants to sweat. Maybe Jackson's more of he wants to watch the game and he's thinking about the game. Maybe the goalie's doing something else where he's throwing a ball against the wall. Like everybody has to have their own time to go along with um, the coach's time. Where I think that comes from my playing, where I was very regimental, where Preston Mitzi was not,
Hmm.
and I have to remember that when I'm planning, or the preparation before a game or even a practice.
It kind of goes back a little bit to what you were saying about your boys that, appreciating that different players are different ways. So
Mhm.
they might be very good hockey players, have high hockey IQ, but drawing it up on the board, they don't get it. So they learn things in a different way. They're
Mhm.
individuals. And we have some players that, like you said, they're going to want to get hyped up before a game, and other ones are going to kind of want to get zen.
Yeah.
And there's still some team expectations of routine. So it's nice that you kind of pull all that together. One thing that we did last year that I found was really effective was it would have been in around November. We asked the players all, and we said you can do it anonymously if you want, but we want you to tell the coaches one thing they're doing well and one thing that they need to improve upon,
Mhm.
or in terms of just the team dynamic. And it was really interesting to get feedback from at that time 13-year-olds, and some of it was incredible. And we're like, yes, we should make that change. So one, they wanted dedicated power play for
Yeah.
U14A, and
Mhm.
they wanted a couple of new drills. So we said, okay, we're going to listen to you. We're going to have a dedicated power play. This is how it's going to roll out. We'll practice that till Christmas before we kind of settle into who it's going to be. But in terms of the drills, we have these specific drills in most of our practices for these reasons, and we're not changing those. But at
Mhm.
least what it did was they were able to express it, and we were able to say, yes, we're listening to you. I'm going to change some things. And there's some things that are in place, but these are the reasons which maybe we hadn't explained before.
Yeah, like I'm a big believer in the players need a voice in it. And it might not be all of them, but
Hmm.
that's why I'm a believer in leaders, and, captains of minor hockey, and a lot of it is, do I think that one captain should have it all the time? U16 maybe, U12 no. Like I think there's
Hmm.
benefit. I played for Jacques Lemaire, and he rotated captains in the NHL, where every month there was a new captain and new assistants, and so like there's so many different ways to do it, but I think you have to give the player the voice to express what they're looking for, and you have
Hmm.
to be humble enough to listen. You might not do what they say, but you need to listen because it might give you a different attitude for not all the time, but maybe 2 games from now, or maybe a game from now, or, and they're the ones that are feeling, what we're coaching. So like you have to listen to them and what they believe
Hmm.
in and what works for them. And, I'm a big believer in trying to talk to players as much as I can. And you try individually to grab guys as much as you can. And, because we always think something. Players want to please coaches. So
Yeah.
sometimes you got to get the actual honest answer out of them. And I think something like that, where you say like one thing you like, one thing you need to improve, you want to give them the voice that they actually can tell you the truth, because if they do, you're going to get more out of it.
Well, and I think the other part of that is it, so I think it's incredibly important to ask for their input and you have to listen to it. Right? You
Yes,
can't if you ask them and just kind of, throw it off to the side into the bin, then that sends a really bad message to your players. But if they give you the input and then you follow it up and maybe have a meeting and say, "Hey, got your input. This is what people are saying. Let's have a conversation." And actually demonstrate that you're paying attention to them, I think you get more buy-in from them as well.
100%. Because then it comes back to what I said at the beginning. It comes back to them believing that we care about them, and if they believe you care about them and they feel like you're making them better, then they're gonna go to bat for you. They're gonna run through a wall for you. And the more guys that do that, the better they're gonna be, the more they're gonna develop, and the better your team's gonna be.
Absolutely. You had mentioned earlier about, if the routine wasn't just perfect before a game, anxiety through the roof. I'm
Hmm.
curious, when you're as a player, if you had a game, from your perspective that wasn't a good game, how would that impact you afterwards?
Well, if you ask my father and my wife, they'd say I was probably the most critical person ever on myself. And I always felt better when my dad would tell me um, what he thought of the game. And this is like, I'm in New Jersey playing against the New Jersey Devils in the NHL, and I still wanted to know what my dad thought. And,
Yeah,
right, which it's pretty awesome when I look back now that I'm a father and think if my son ever wants to call me, think it's awesome.
yeah,
But it shows you that, like, for me, I was always so self-conscious about my game. And then, like, my wife gives me a hard time now. She's like, okay, so you made under 17 as a 16-year-old? Yeah. You made under 18 as an 18-year-old for Canada? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you're drafted second round of the NHL? Yeah. She's like, why are you so hard on yourself? I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't stop it. Like I wanted to be perfect. And so imperfect to me was bad. And so I really, at the time, like, mental health and sports psychology wasn't like a thing yet. And
hmm
then it started to become more of a thing when I was in the NHL, and or when I first started when I got drafted, it wasn't really a thing. And then I'll never forget, um I was let go by the Anaheim Mighty Ducks the first time. Brian Burke took over as the GM, and then they weren't going to sign me. And it was the first time after 4 years of pro that I was a free agent, which some people, like the guys that just signed for $18 million, they're happy to be a free agent. When you're like in the AHL and you're not making a ton of money and you're 23 years old and somebody says they don't want you, it was hard. I remember sitting on
yeah,
my dock with my parents going, what do I do? What's next? And they're like, well, all you can do is work out tomorrow, and hopefully Larry, my agent, Larry Kelly, he's a legendary agent, could get me something. And his next suggestion for me was to try a sports psychologist, and her name was Dana Sinclair. She was out of Toronto, and I started working with her, and um, she gave me a whole realization about why I was thinking the way I was, and gave me ways to change my not attitude, but like, my mental health when things weren't going right, or she
Right.
helped me with my preparation. And again, it can go into it for days, but like basically it was this is that she really helped me worry about the, the process and not the result. And then she really helped me come up with four, I think it was five fundamentals in my game that I did well when I was playing at my best, and then it was just finding ways to remind myself of those fundamentals and worrying about them instead of worrying about the result. And it was something that has stuck with me all my coaching with all my players, in development with what I do for a living. But I just remember it because it actually was the next year I made the NHL and I stuck. And I want to say it was because of Dana, but like I don't know. But it was like, I worked with her for 3 or 4 years, and it was something that like I never even knew it was a thing. And then all of a sudden it became something where now it's just as important as off ice training. But like, people, you gotta understand it to believe it. I think a lot of people
Hmm.
don't know what it is. And then when you start to find ways to make yourself feel better, trick your brain into, the right mindset, all these things, it was something that I had no idea about. And it was something that actually in the end kind of changed my career.
Hmm. Yeah, I talk to people a lot about confidence, and that's kind of what you're describing to me is because, find those things that you do well and you keep putting in the work, and then there's that evidence of I've done the work. There's the evidence of how I've been successful, even though I'm facing adversity right now, that doesn't define me in this moment. I have all this evidence of the work I've already put in. And shifting your focus to that can have a huge, it sounds like for you, it did have a huge impact being able to shift that focus.
Yeah, like I was able to change my mindset where, okay, so like I'll just tell you, it was something that's so simple is before a game during the national anthem, I would say to myself, uh, move my head, bend my knees, move my feet, shoot the puck, and then I would literally shake my shoulders and it was finish checked. And if I did those five things, I usually played well. But it was more than I did it the national anthem. I did it at the beginning of the first. I did it at the beginning of the second. I did it at the beginning of the third. And it was just something that like almost like helped me like lock in and try to focus on those things. And when I did those things, you know, I wasn't perfect all the time, but I started to play more in the moment, not worried about what was happening and worrying about what I was doing. And I think it really helped me that way.
Yeah, for sure. So mindfulness, right? Being in the moment, in the present, and then resetting in between those periods to keep you focused on the things that you're trying to pay attention to.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna try to like, you know, get to a point even more this year where I help these kids because the pressure is going to be through the roof in
Yeah.
their expectations of trying to get drafted or trying to get scouted by NCAA or USHL, whatever they think it is. And they need to remember what makes them good, what the
Hmm.
fundamentals in their game that give them success. And it's going to be a lot more work than any other year probably, but this is what honestly kind of what I do for a living. I work with the prospects for the Utah, and it's the same thing. We talk to them about what they're good at and then what you
Hmm.
need to improve, but focus on what you're good at and really, really like, dig into like your strengths. And I think that like, it all came back to like what I learned from, sitting on my parents' dock, being like, what do I do next? To, meeting this woman who, kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but like changed my career, and it went up from there. And she, my wife, she says it was her that helped her because she moved with me, but like it was the combo of both of them, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if you want someone to come and talk to your team this year, I happen to know a guy.
Okay.
So, I'm curious. So, having those experiences, how you were so critical on yourself as a player. So now, as a coach, if there's a game that doesn't go well, maybe not great on the line matches, or even if it's outside of your control and players did things that you didn't want them to do, and if it's not a good outcome, how do you manage that adversity now?
Well, I would say I have become a coach where I'm okay with mistakes from trying hard. Like if you're trying hard and you're making mistakes, I'm okay with that. Like I
Hmm.
can live with that. We can talk about the mistake you made, what um what you didn't know, or we can talk about like, what broke down, or we can talk about something that can help you with that situation again next time. But for me, I have a really hard time when guys like, you know, don't know the plays and they don't work, and it's something that if you're not working that night, you're not putting the full energy in. That's the stuff that bothers me. And it's it's something that like I'm not a yeller, but I'm definitely a loud talker. Like
Hmm.
I very direct in what I believe we did wrong or what we need to improve. But I'm not a yeller and a screamer. I don't think it works. I never liked it.
Yeah.
There was a time where I remember when I coached in Oshawa, there was one time where, I was so upset I had like, saliva coming out of my mouth
Foaming
and
at the
I was
mouth.
foaming at the mouth. I literally was. And it was but it wasn't because our guys were making mistakes. It was our effort and our energy. And I didn't understand why in that moment against that team. Like, how can you not be fired up? Like, do you not love the game? And so for me, it kind of goes like that, even with minor hockey. Like, you love the game, you lay it on the line. We can you make a mistake and it's okay. But like, if you're lazy and you're not focused, so that's when I get upset. And it's again, it's not you weren't here. It's no, you didn't look when you were coming back, even though we've told you 100 times, or
Hmm.
you didn't skate the extra 2 strides to get there, or you got out of the way of the shot. Like it's stuff like that where it's stuff that you're choosing to do rather than things that happen while you're trying to do the right things.
Yeah, mistakes are interesting because when they make them, a question I'll sometimes ask is, what did you see out there?
Yeah, yeah.
And it
What
was,
100%? I ask that all the time. What did you see? Because
yeah.
maybe they just missed it, or maybe
Well, they see the game different. My
yeah,
oldest is a 2010, and I remember him and I after we're having a heated conversation after a game, and I'm trying to explain to him something to do, and he's, coming back at me, and I'm like, like we're having this talk. I'm like, first of all, and I'm actually in this moment, I'm your coach. Don't talk back to me like
yeah,
that. I'm not your
yeah.
dad
Oh
right
yeah.
now. We had a
Yeah.
few of those dust ups. But he said, like, you see it different than I do. And it dawned on me that, we're standing up on the perch on the bench, and we could be 10 feet or we could be 110 feet away from the puck and the
Mhm.
play, and they're at ice level. And
With
I
everybody around them and everything's
yeah,
moving
and
and
it's
fans are
moving.
yelling. It's a lot.
Yeah. And it dawned on me in that moment that just the perspective, the view, like even think about taking a shot, right? My eyes of the net are different than the puck's eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, I need to start asking players, what did you see? And then say to them, and most of the time they've got a really good explanation. And I'll say, oh, okay. So from up here, next time, maybe try and get your head up a little bit more so you can see this opening or whatever. But I find that that creates a really interesting dialogue with the players.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between like how you coach the team versus how you coach the player. Like
Hmm.
if I'm coaching a team, I'm going down to the D and, directly saying, guys, we got to find the middle of the ice. It's wide open on breakouts. Versus me going to Jackson, my son, being like, hey, what did you see there? Did you see the middle? And he's like, yeah, but I saw a guy's stick and I was nervous, so I decided to go up the wall. Okay, no problem. Like there's different ways to do it, even though it's the same message,
Hmm.
but it's doing it on a personal level versus a team level.
Yeah, and also recognizing that he saw something and is still processed, made a decision instead of maybe just, serving a pizza up the middle that gets picked off, right? He saw the stick, you didn't.
Yeah, and like he sees the stick, but I'm also thinking about who's up next, who's up for their team, how much time's left in the game. Is it a penalty kill? Is it a power play?
Yeah.
Who's playing well, who's playing not. So like you got all that going on in your head, and you think you see something. And I'm the first guy to tell guys when they come off and they'll say, "Hey, coach, in that play should have been this." I'll be like, didn't see it. Sorry. Like I don't want to lie. It's just like I missed it. Sorry, I
Yeah.
can't help you. Because I think that's more. And then they're like, okay, and then they move on because it's probably coming off worried about the play they made. And so by me being humble, be like, hey, sorry, I missed it. I was talking to so and so, or I was writing something down. They get off it and they move on quicker.
Yeah. And that's always kind of crappy, especially when it's your own kid that makes the play and you miss it because you're coaching somebody else.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the one downside of coaching your own child, right? Because sometimes you miss what they do.
Yeah, and then it's the coach dad dynamic. It's not easy. It's really not. But that would be a whole podcast on itself. I think how to work on that
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get you back.
one.
Um, I'm curious. I do, we're getting a little tight on time. I don't want to, I mean, I'd love to chat all night about this stuff, but you probably have things to do given that you are a parent. Um, I'm curious. I do want to chat a little bit about the injury, about when you
Yeah,
broke your leg. So I think I'm. Can you maybe walk me through a little bit of kind of what happened, even just high level on that?
yeah. So we were playing in San Jose on. I want to say it was March. I think I want to say March 19th. I can't exactly remember. We were playing in San Jose. I was playing some of my best hockey.
March 19th, 2008.
There you go. There you go.
I did my homework.
There you go. Yeah, like it's something that's ingrained in my head. But it has been a long time since I talked about it. But I was playing the best hockey in my career. I was on the power play, PP1, playing with great players. Jacques Lemaire was our coach. We were playing San Jose against Marlowe and Thornton, and I was playing against those guys and feeling great about my career. And I went back for an icing. I was the weak side D, and they chipped it past my partner, so I went back to get it kind of on a bad angle. And for whatever reason, I was reaching for it, but then the puck kind of got stuck on the board, so I reached back. So I was kind of off balance, and the guy just gave me a little shot in the hips. And to this day, like Torrey Mitchell, who hit me, is
Hmm.
somebody that the first time we played against Edmonton, he ran off the bus to come talk to me, and he's been nothing but great. And he was upset in the penalty box, so like I don't fault him for anything that ever happened, but his weight and my weight went in, and you know if you're in a fight and you're scared, you turtle, right? So in
Yeah.
that moment, I was going to the boards, I turtled, so I brought my knees up, and it was probably the worst thing I could have done because then it created the contact of all his weight and my weight on a
Oh,
on
okay.
a bent knee going into the boards, and it was my left knee, and so I felt something right away. I was in bad shape. I was on the ice, and there was a big kerfuffle around me because they were trying to get at Tory, but then somebody was smart enough to be like, "Hey, get away from him! Like he's really hurt." And then I remember the trainer running out and him saying, "Is it your back? Is your back?" I said, "I don't know. I think it's my leg." And he's like, "Move your right foot." So I moved my right foot, and then he's like, "Move your left," and it wasn't moving. He's like, "Okay, stretcher." And in that moment, I knew something was broken, but I didn't
Hmm.
know. It felt like my knee exploded, is what it felt like. And
Right.
um, breaking a femur didn't happen that much. I hadn't heard of many guys that did it. So like, I thought it was my knee, and then from there to the hospitals, it's pretty gray. Like, I remember being in the ambulance and being like, guys, stop hitting the bumps. Like I can feel everyone, and they're like, I'm like kind of like, I need more drugs. They're like, we can't give you any more. You've got like morphine in you, like
Yeah.
nothing. And then being in the hospital was kind of in and out. I had my equipment on. I remember them cutting it off. I remember them putting my leg in traction. And then literally, I woke up the next day, and my wife was there. We were in San Jose. They'd flown her in. She was on a vacation in Palm Springs with one of the other wives. And so they flew her in. And, you wake up and, it's from any surgery. I don't know if you've had surgeries before, but,
Yeah.
you wake up and you're kind of like, oh God. And then your wife's there. And you have no idea that like
You're
the surgery
foggy.
took 8. Yeah, and the surgery took
Hmm.
10 hours. It was supposed to take 3. So my parents thought I died. And, they didn't hear for 10 hours what was going on. So all that's going on and you have no idea.
Yeah.
And so long story short, I broke my femur right in the middle in 3 spots. So right in the middle, it snapped. At the top, it shifted. And then that middle piece that was on its own kind of blew up. So They cut me open on the side. They fixed it all. They drilled down the middle. I have a rod, two screws at the bottom, a screw in the top, and then they had a couple wires around it. And, I woke up to the doctor telling me about this. And then, hockey, athlete, I said right away, when am I back? And he's like, I can't believe
Hmm.
you're asking this. I'm like, no, like you get injured, you move on. They're like, well, we'll see. This was the break. It was pretty bad. And, um, so, that's kind of how it all happened. And then I actually spent a full week in the San Jose airport hospital because they needed I lost so much blood when they cut me open with the bone breaking. Your femur is one of the biggest red blood cell makers in your body.
Right.
So I had so much blood loss that they had to get my blood levels back to normal. So I think it was like 2 or 3 pints of blood I took. And then they wouldn't allow me, even though I was doing my rehab in the hotel, they wouldn't allow me to leave the hospital until my red blood cell count was back to, within normal range. And then,
Hmm.
but then I had a broken femur, my leg stuck. So actually, and it's pretty amazing to this day, Minnesota paid for a private plane to get me home because I couldn't go on a regular commercial plane because my
Right.
leg was, I was literally taken onto the plane on a stretcher and taken off on a stretcher with an ambulance ride there and an ambulance ride home. So like it was the only way to get home. So they paid for me and my wife to fly all the way home on a private jet. And then I spent another week in the hospital because they didn't want me to leave until I could actually crutch on my own. Um, and so I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. I spent like probably 6 weeks on a walker, and then it was crutches, and then it was underwater treadmill. Like the recovery ended up missing 11 months,
Hmm.
and like you had mentioned before we talked about, like you said you're gonna bring up this injury. Like there was dark days, like when you're going
Yeah.
to the rink every day by yourself in the summer by yourself, and you never knew if it was going to actually come back. And, lucky enough, my body um, healed the way I needed, and I was able to make a return after 11 months.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, incredible journey. It's you talk about things were a bit foggy in that ride from the arena to the hospital. I've been pretty open that I had a motorcycle accident. So you talk
Yeah.
about it kind of being etched into your brain. Mine was July 22nd, 2002 at 11:20
Hmm.
in the morning. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long time ago, but I remember exactly when it happened. And so someone had made a left in front of me and I T-boned them.
Hmm.
And I remember kind of coming up off the seat. And then I remember hitting on the road on the other side. But that
Wow.
whole stretch in between is totally gone for me. I don't
Yeah.
remember any of that.
I think our
So
brain does that on purpose.
yeah, probably. Yeah. And I remember sliding down the road after that and medics and all that kind of stuff. Um, and for you, like as soon as you come out of it, you're like, when can I play hockey again? So you end up on this journey of trying to get back. Like what was driving you? What was inside of you kind of driving you to want to get back on the ice after suffering such an incredible injury?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's funny because I've been asked that before, and it was kind of like, for lack of a better way to say it, I just always felt like it was just that was my job. Like I play hockey, you get injured, you come back. It takes a week, it takes two, it takes eight, whatever it takes, you come back. And um, you know, it, I had great people around me. I had uh, two guys that basically did the majority of my rehab. I had a couple ladies at a underwater treadmill pool where us and the Minnesota Viking guys would go that were wonderful to me. I had a supportive NHL team. They signed me to a contract and gave me the exact same money, and they didn't have to. Like they had to rehab me. That's part of the
Because your
agreement.
contract ended the end of that season, right?
It ended, but it basically they have to take care of you until you're healthy. But they paid me the same again and gave me the same money and said, no, we believe in you. We know you can come back. So like because of all that, it was almost like they it was hard, but they made it something that I wanted to do. They showed the support in me to work with me, and I was okay. Well, then I'm going to come back. But like, I never once thought I wasn't going to come back. There was just some like really hard days and really
Hmm.
hard days where you wonder will your leg come back? Will my leg come back? Like, will the power in it come back? And it was more that rather than thinking I couldn't do it. It's like I felt like I knew I could do it. It was just, was my body going to allow me to do
Right. How did you push through that? Like what was going on? What would you say to yourself in those situations?
it? Usually it took me going to the rink and being around the guys. And then you get reminded of why you're doing it. And then, you know, something that's like really cool that is probably taken for granted in the NHL. NHL people like, you play in the NHL, you make a lot of money, like it's awesome. But like when you have family that like support you and want to be there all the time, whether it's my wife or my parents, and you know, the amount of stuff that they did for me, I kind of wanted to like do everything I could for them to like fulfill what, kind of what I was doing. And I I loved playing hockey. Like I always said to myself, like I'm the luckiest person ever. Like I'm playing a game for a living and I'm getting paid and I'm supporting my wife and my kids and by playing a game. And so
Hmm.
for me, it was like I felt lucky to be in that position. So I just found a way to get through. And a lot of it for me was, talking. It was talking to Dana Sinclair, who was my mental skills coach. It was, talking to my wife, talking to my agent, talking to the trainers I was with, and creating those relationships that, they showed belief in you. So you want to show belief that you want to kind of do it for them too. So kind of a combination of everything, but I think a lot of it was just the support I had around me, and understanding that like things are hard and it's going to be long days, but eventually there's going to be an end to it. And I remember to this day, I was doing a ladder drill in the gym during a game, and Tom Lim was the assistant GM, and he came in. He said, "How you feeling?" I'm like, "You know what? I'm feeling good. Feel good in practice." And he's like, "Okay, if you want to play, you want to go down to Houston and play." Like it would be my first game, and I was like, "All right, like sure, like I let's try." Like because it had been 11 months, and I was like, I had to get over the fact, and then you know, my first game was actually in Chicago, against the Chicago Wolves in the AHL, which was a team that I started my NHL or my AHL pro career with. I played 3 years there, so it was pretty cool that that was the first place I came back. And did I feel 100%? No, I probably didn't feel 100% until I trained the whole next summer. But it was something that, like, when I got back on the ice and I was around the guys in the room, it was like you forgot about all the hard, and it was something that, like, it was something that, I'll never forget. My wife was able to come to that and watch the game, and like my parents were there too. And it's something that, it was proud for me. I was proud for them, and it was kind of like I did it. And um, it was 11 months of ups and downs, but I just kind of always had that goal in my mind to that was my job, and this is why people support me is because I play. So like I'm going to do it for them, do it for me, and just kind of try to always see that little light at the end.
With the way you describe getting back on the ice for that first game, like this vision I have in my head is like this giant exhale.
Yeah.
Where it's just kind of, I don't know if it's like a moment of peace or what, but just like a,
Yeah, you know what? There was almost like multiple along the road. It was like I remember when I got married that summer. So like 4 months after my injury, I got married. So I had a cane at the wedding, and so like when I finally got rid of the cane, it was like an exhale, like, okay, and then when the first time I got on the ice, we were at Parade Ice Garden. It's where the Mighty Ducks movies were taped. It was our practice facility in Minnesota. Like, I'll never forget it. And I went out there, had a helmet, gloves, tracksuit, and I literally could only waddle, but
hmm,
nothing had ever felt better than doing a circle and shooting a puck again. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, it's like another step, but another relief. And then it was getting into a practice. Then it was, getting into game situation practice. Then it was going to Houston. Then it was going back to NHL. And the best thing that ever happened to me was I was called back up after my AHL rehab, and I wasn't playing. A couple games I'd sat out. We were playing in LA, and before the game, I wasn't playing. I wasn't warming up, so I was doing a workout. I was in the hallway, finishing my workout. I'd done a bike, was doing like I'd done a full like 30-minute bike that we were prescribed by our strength coach because I wasn't one. We had dressed an extra forward for warm up, I think. And then I never forget Brent Burns coming around the corner, and Burns is like, Fozzie, my back's killing me. You better go get ready. And I was like, no way, no way. Sure enough, like 2 minutes later, the trainer comes out. He's like, you got to get dressed. I'm like, what? He's like, you got to get dressed right now. So I literally had 12 minutes to like throw my stuff on, get dressed, get ready. And then there it was, second shift of the game, playing as Rob Blake, who was like my hero. And like, so I didn't really have time to think about it. It actually ended up being the most perfect way to play my first game again because I wasn't sitting there all night the night before, all day wondering and waiting. It was just thrust into this. And, I didn't play great. I didn't feel great, but I did it. And it was
Hmm.
almost so much, so helpful that, it went down that way.
Yeah, that's great. Is there something that you could look back and say like that you learned about yourself going through that experience that maybe you wouldn't have known had you not gone through that injury and that recovery?
Yeah, I think the word that just comes to my mind is just resilience. Like I think, when you're young and good things happen and you get drafted to the OHL, you get drafted to the NHL, you're kind of like there's like it's good steps, right? But then
Yeah.
through that I learned that there's like bad steps and there's steps down and multiple steps down and you're gonna have to take some down to go up. And I learned how far I could push and I learned about like how supportive everybody was and the people that reached out and the people that were willing to help and the good people in the hockey world that were there for me. It kind of like made you appreciate them and the,
Mm.
the hockey world and your family and almost like the resilience helped me appreciate things more.
Yeah, so you've got like people that stand by you when things are going well, and it's easier to do the work when things are going well. But you also learned that when shit goes sideways, you still had people standing by you and supporting you, and that you could still push through it.
100%. And it's amazing. Like the one thing about the hockey community that like is awesome is that it is a community. Like whether
Hmm.
it's minor hockey and I run into you at the rink and you're watching practice and you're taking drills, or I'm Wayne Clark is sending me drills, or I'm working with this guy, or I'm talking to Andre Tournier, who's a Utah coach, and we're talking about development. Like it's a community of good people and they're the ones that have success and they're the people that are in these positions and you kind of doesn't matter who you are, you feel like you're part of something, and it's just that's what like I got out of it most.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions just before we wrap up. So, first one, favorite rink to play in?
Montreal, the Bell Center, there's nothing like it. It is loud, the fans are on top of you, they're nuts, they cheers, they're like the game is so high emotion and like it's an NHL ice service, but it feels like you're playing in the Northcrest. Like it is just like so small. And you know, it was just an experience. My dad was a Montreal Canadiens fan, and being able to play there is something that I'll just never forget.
Nice. I love the Northcrest reference. That was my son's favorite rink. And funny story, when we locked down for COVID, I was coaching a team. We had just wrapped our practice. I walked to my vehicle and got the message that everything was locked down. So we were the second last team to ever be on the ice at Northcrest.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so favorite rink to coach in?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would say when I was coaching in Oshawa for the Gens, we scored a goal off a faceoff with 1 second left against the Kings of Frontenac, and it's something I'll never forget. The roar of the crowd, the players did the play we wrote up, and it was just something that, like, as a coach, it was just an amazing experience that night.
Awesome. Toughest teammate to practice against?
So I'm going to go way back. So my one of my best friends for the Peterborough Petes was a guy named Darcy Morris, and he was a left winger grinder. and we were great buddies. And we probably got in 3 fights in our 3 years playing together in practice because we would just go at each other all the time. And it was, all in good fun, but like, the emotions get high and then you like, you try to fight each other, but then you laugh about it. And, it was just something I'll never forget.
Nice. And one person who changed your career.
Hockey or coaching?
Oh, let's go with hockey.
Hockey, I would say Adam Oates. So Adam Oates was the assistant coach in Tampa Bay. Um, for whatever reason, he believed in me. He gave me a chance on a power play with Martin St. Louis, Vinny Lecavalier, and Steven Stamkos. And they're the reason that, I was able to prolong my career and be lucky enough to have a good salary for a couple years. And but he was a guy who gave me a chance and he saw something in me that I didn't know was there and pushed me to a new level. So I'd say he's my playing one. And then as a coach, I would say a guy named Jay Verdi. Jay Verdi was our head coach in Kingston. I thought I knew how to coach. I learned a lot under Jody Hall and Peterborough. I had a good understanding, but working beside him and seeing him grind day in, day out and try to improve himself as well as the team, I still use so much of his terminology and structure and how he was as a person. I still use it till today.
Right on. Sweet or spicy?
Spicy.
Nice. Potato chips or ice cream?
Oh, potato chips, any kind.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I tend to gravitate towards the Ruffles regular, but yeah, big fan of chips.
Yeah.
And last question, who would be on your hockey Mount Rushmore?
Ooh. Well, the first guy is Brett Hall. He was my favorite player growing up. I had the Cards. I had the St. Louis Blues jersey. I swear to God, he winked at me one game in Ottawa. Like, it's something I'll never forget. I had the jersey on. So he'd be my number one. Jacques Lemaire, as a coach, he was somebody that changed my career and gave me a chance to finally be the D that I thought I was, and not just the 6'5" guy who was tough.
Hmm.
And I owe him so much. I would say as in development with what I do now, I have a kid. His name's Maverick Lamoureux, and I've been through multiple injuries for him. And he just, he was my first guy that I worked with that played an NHL game, and you kind of see what you worked on work. So I'd say those 3 guys, like kind of different guys from different parts of my career, but it's a different Mount Rushmore, but it's kind of my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, that's super cool. One more.
Um, I'd say my brother. My brother, it's funny. So my brother was an OHL first round pick. Um, he went to an NHL camp with Toronto, and we're kind of the good story of the OHL. You have 2 kids that play in the OHL. They both get education packages. One, I turned pro. I played a long time. It set up my family. My brother used his education package, went to the University of PEI, and has a job now where he's in business and he runs a restaurant. He used to work for the Charlottetown Islanders. So just somebody I respect immensely the way he played. All my teammates wanted to kill him. We got to play against each other for a couple years, and so I'd add him to the list.
That's awesome. I love that your Mount Rushmore is so diverse and isn't kind of that the cookie cutter responses. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it could be, but like, you ask who mine is, and it's like those are the people that are important to me, and they all bring different aspects to like what I've done, and I owe a lot to some people, and then when now I can take everything I've learned and give it to others, like with Maverick, it's pretty fun to watch.
Nice. Fozzie, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, especially like we had only just kind of casually, hello, how's it going in the arena, and you still, signed up for tonight, which I really do appreciate. And I guess I'll see you at the arena within a few weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's coming quick. It's crazy to think it's almost August, but no, this was fun. I honestly, I don't get to do it a lot and talk about everything, and I appreciate the opportunity, and um, you know, I think you never know where the paths might cross. My younger son's in the AA PHA program, so I'm gonna hopefully get involved in that soon too. So you never know where we might run into each other again.
Nice. And I'm sure I'll probably get you on another time to talk more about coaching.
Yeah, there's so much more to talk about. We didn't even get to development. So, I appreciate, it was a lot of fun and thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Fozzie. A huge thank you to Kurtis for joining me today and for sharing his story so openly. One of the things that stood out to me throughout our conversation is that while talent may open doors, it's resilience, adaptability, and the people around us that often determine how far we go. From his experiences in minor hockey to competing in the NHL, recovering from a career threatening injury, and now coaching the next generation, Kurtis reminds us that our greatest lessons often come from the moments we didn't choose. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, review, leave a comment, and share it with someone who you think would benefit from hearing. If you're looking to discuss confidence, pressure, or identity in sport, visit paulbrowncoaching.com and book a free consultation. You can also connect with me on Instagram and YouTube at Paul Brown Coaching. Thanks for listening, and remember, progress, not perfection.